Whether you're a pianist, a string player, or play any other kind of instrument, have you ever noticed how it can be really difficult sometimes to get the two sides of your body to work in sync with one another? For me, this often manifested as a general sloppiness or blurring of notes in fast passages with string crossings. Because what would happen is the fingers on my left hand would touch the strings ever so slightly before or after my bow moved, so things just didn't sound as clean and crisp as they should. But one summer, violinist Isaac Stern shared a practice tip with me that magically solved this issue. When I tell you what it is, you'll probably think it's a little bonkers, but it seemed to work for me, and it certainly did the job for Isaac Stern. So what was his secret? Well, he said that when he ran into tricky passages, he would practice it by fingering the passage in both hands simultaneously. What does that even mean? Well, I promise to explain what exactly this looks like in a moment and how you can apply this to your particular instrument, but there are a couple questions we need to look at first. Question number one, is this actually a thing that can help, or is it just a waste of time? And question number two, if this does work, why? There's a fair amount of research on a phenomenon known as bilateral transfer of learning, which suggests that training one side of your body can have benefits for the corresponding muscles on the other side of your body. For an example of this, let's take a look at a fencing study. So a team of Polish researchers recruited 16 adolescent fencers, all right-handed, with an average of 6 years of experience. Everyone started off by going through a series of tests on an electronic target, which evaluated their skill level on a basic fencing technique, the straight thrust. Basically, the targets would light up in various ways, and they had to hit the lights as quickly and as accurately as possible. After completing this initial evaluation, participants were randomly assigned to one of two groups. And then for the next 6 weeks, the control group continued to train and practice like normal. Meanwhile, the experimental group spent 30 minutes of each practice session doing various drills and exercises using their non-dominant side, that is, their left hand instead of their right hand, before rejoining the control group to complete their normal training activities. Kind of as if they were training to be more ambidextrous. Anyhow, after 6 weeks, participants in both groups were tested once again to see who improved more. So, big question is, was it worth taking time out of their regular training to work on their left side, even though they would never actually fence left-handed in competition? Well, let's take a look at the results of the 3 tests. On one test, 3 targets lit up simultaneously, and they had to hit them as quickly and as accurately as possible. And after 6 weeks of normal practice, the control group improved by 0.22 seconds, and the experimental group improved by 0.27 seconds. So a slight teeny tiny difference, but not a statistically significant one, meaning the two groups basically improved equally. On another test, there were 2 targets that lit up, but one after another. Like one target will light up first, and if they hit that accurately, then another random target would light up and they'd have to hit that one. Both groups improved on this test too. The control group improved by 0.17 seconds, and the experimental group improved by 0.37 seconds. But once again, this difference was also not statistically significant. The third test was much like the second test, but with a third target. So if you hit the first target, a second one would randomly light up. And if you hit that target, a third target would light up and you'd have to hit that one. This was actually the hardest of the 3 tests, and this is where a difference in training began to emerge. Because while both groups improved on this task as well, the group that trained both their left and right sides improved by 0.65 seconds, whereas the group that only trained their right side improved by only 0.24 seconds. In other words, the experimental group's improvement was about 171% greater than the control group's improvement, and this difference was statistically significant. So why does practicing a skill on the opposite side seem to help? Well, it's not entirely clear quite yet, as multiple theories have been proposed to explain the underlying mechanisms of bilateral transfer of learning. For instance, the cross-activation model suggests that when you practice a skill on one side of your body, there's a bit of neuro spillover, if you will, where your brain also experiences a bit of activity in the hemisphere that controls the side that you're not training in the moment. So at the end of the day, both sides of your brain benefit. The part that controls your non-dominant side, as well as the part that controls your dominant side. So what are we to do with all of this? Well, this remains an ongoing area of research, and there are various nuances involved. For instance, transfer seems to work better in some directions than others for certain tasks, and there may be differences between tasks involving strength versus timing. But all in all, it seems that Isaac Stern was onto something with his bilateral fingering exercise, and it may be worth experimenting with using your non-dominant hand more often to supplement your practice. So what exactly would that look like? Well, it depends on your instrument, of course, and this is not something that's widely done yet, so a lot of us are still figuring out what works best on different instruments. But with a string instrument, you can do exactly what Isaac Stern did. Basically, the idea is to move the fingers on both hands simultaneously, at first slowly perhaps because it's going to be confusing, but eventually at the goal tempo. Of course, you don't have to move the fingers on your bow hand nearly as much as the fingers on your left hand. Just a little twitching or light pressure, and eventually just thinking or feeling the fingers in your right hand is enough. If you're doing some mental practice or listening to a recording, you can practice the fingering in your right hand instead of your left by tapping on your leg or your forearm. Likewise, with the guitar, you could just practice fingering with your right hand only, or both hands simultaneously while going through the music in your mind. For brass instruments, you could finger through passages with your opposite hand while solfeging or singing or mentally hearing the pitches. For woodwind instruments, it's a little trickier. I know some folks have tried keeping their hands in the regular places while miming playing the instrument, with each hand doing the fingering that the other hand would normally do. Others have tried switching hands and actually trying to play the instrument to make the right pitches come out. For the piano, you could take either the right or left hand part and play that same part mirrored in both hands simultaneously, which pianist Marc-André Hamelin demonstrates in the video that I've linked below in the description. And if you're a singer, well, unfortunately, this may not be the practice hack for you. But for most other musicians and instruments, at the end of the day, not only could this really benefit your playing, but it makes for a really engaging challenge in the practice room too. And getting more out of your practice time is awesome, of course, but it's more meaningful when it all translates into more confident and less nerve-wracking performances. So if performances have been hit or miss, and you're curious to find out what might be at the root of this, I've put together a free short quiz that could help. It only takes 4 minutes, and you'll get a personalized score and suggestions for which skills to focus on next. Check out the link in the description below.